skills all the time in our day-to-day life, and the IELTS exam tests your ability to use these skills. Let's look in a little bit more detail now at the different types of reading skills that the IELTS exam tests you on. First of all, skimming. This is where we read quickly just to understand the general idea, or as we sometimes say, the gist of a piece of reading. At this stage, we don't need to worry about words that we don't understand. There's a lot of vocabulary given to you in the reading exam, and you don't need to understand the meaning of each of these words. Skimming is really quick reading, looking for key words, important information, just so we can get an approximate idea of the general topic of the passage, of the article. And we'll look at some examples a little bit later on. Next, we need to scan. This is where we're looking for one specific piece of information. It could be someone's name. It could be the name of a country, possibly. A place, maybe. Even a number. The question can help us to understand what piece of information we should be looking at. Does the question begin with a who? Or a where, maybe? Or even a how much? Again, we'll look at that a little bit later on. Finally, the exam tests our ability to read in detail. Sometimes we call this reading between the lines or looking between the lines. And this is where we need to read certain parts of the reading in detail. Not the whole reading. We don't have enough time to read the whole article in detail. But there are certain passages, certain sentences that we need to read slowly, more carefully, in order often to understand the writer's general opinion. Let's look in a little bit more detail at that first reading skill, skimming. If you remember, this is where we're looking at an article just to understand the overall meaning. Okay. If you look at a short topic, you need to look really for keywords that relate to the meaning of the subject. Okay, so maybe here we're ignoring things like maybe prepositions, articles. We're focusing on the, as we say in English, the bare bones of the text. Let's look at an example now. So we've got a short piece of reading here. So police had no difficulty apprehending a gang of thieves who stole £100,000 from a football club. The robbers made their escape on a pitch marking machine, but forgot to switch off the line painting mechanism. Officers simply followed the white line to find them. Now, quite simple, quite straightforward here. But we don't need to understand the meaning of every word, but we can recognize certain words here which help us to understand by looking at things like police, thieves, stole, robbers, escape, and officers there. All of that helps us to understand that the meaning of the article there, the general topic, is one of crime. Let's look now at another example. Here we need to focus on specific information here. Okay, we're not looking for the general meaning of the article, but we're looking in a little bit more detail. Let's have a look here. So again, if we're asked the question, for example, if we're asked for the question, how much money did thieves try to steal from here, then again, really simply, we look at the question, how much? Well, obviously, this leads us to a figure. Figures are always easy to find in a text. It's great if you have a question that asks you how much or how many. It's easy in a big body and a large body of text. It's easy to find figures, and there we can see, obviously, that the thief stole £100,000. Unfortunately, my presentation is running a little bit slow here. You have to bear with me here. Okay, we seem to have some technical problems at the moment. Bear with me one moment. Why is it? We appear to have frozen here a little bit. Aha, okay, we're moving again now. Okay, sorry about that. Let's look at the text now in a little bit more detail. If we look again at the same piece of text there, we can see here that if we're given a statement that says the robbers used an unusual vehicle to get away in, then we can see that, according to the text, the robbers made their escape on a pitch marking machine, an unusual vehicle there. Hang on one second. Can you open the window? Just open. So if we're given a statement such as the robbers used an unusual vehicle to get away in, then we can see that that is true. Okay, remember, a very common reading topic is reading question is true, false, or not given. You're given a statement and you need to decide whether that's true, according to the text, whether it's false, or if there is just no information regarding that in the text that you are given. Always remember the time. The most important thing to remember is that time is your biggest enemy. It's the biggest problem. Okay, it's one thing if you can do the reading within 3 or 4 hours, but unfortunately in the arts exam you have 60 minutes. You have 1 hour. Okay, no extra time. Unlike the listening. In the listening, you have 10 minutes at the end to write your answers, but in the reading you don't. Okay, 60 minutes includes looking for the answers and putting your answers on the question sheet. Again, it's very, very important to use your time effectively. In the reading exam, you can expect to see between 2,000 and 2,500 words. That's a lot of words to read in 1 hour. It's really too many words to read in 1 hour. 1 hour is really not quite long enough, and that's deliberate. That's why it's so important to use different reading skills depending on what question you need to answer. You don't need to understand every single word. Okay? You don't have a dictionary in the exam. If you don't understand a word, then there are several things you should do. Look at the word, ask yourself, is it a verb? Is it a noun? Is it an adjective? Can you guess the meaning from looking at the word in context? And remember, you don't need to understand all of the words that you're given. Use your time carefully. You shouldn't spend more than 1, or at the maximum 2 minutes on each question. Okay? Do the easy questions first of all, and then return and come back and do the ones that required a little bit more thought and that you couldn't think about, you couldn't get straight away. As I said, don't spend too long on each individual question. Let's look now at what you should do in the exam when you open your paper and you've got your reading exam there in front of you. First of all, look at the title. Don't ignore the title. The title can help you understand, but do remember that titles sometimes play with words and use idiomatic language. You can Titles can help you understand, but you shouldn't trust them completely. Let's look now at an example of a title here. So what have we got here? Sleep better than midnight oil on eve of exams. We can immediately understand the meaning of some of these words. Obviously, sleep and midnight exams are all familiar words to us. But put together in that sentence, the title sounds a little bit confusing. Sleep better than midnight oil on eve of exams. Does that help us to understand the meaning of the text? Well, it might help us if we remember that, again, they're using idiomatic language and they're playing a bit with the words just in the title. And this means that it's better to go to sleep early on the evening before your exams than to stay up late studying. Is there a picture? Pictures are always there to help you. They're not just there to look pretty. There are not always pictures. You shouldn't expect to see a picture or a photograph or a drawing in every single reading. But if there is a picture there, it's there to help you understand the meaning of the text. It's always relevant. It's always there for a reason. Don't ignore the picture. And then skim that first paragraph. Okay. Look at the title, look at the picture, skim the first paragraph. Remember, you're skimming. Don't worry about words at this stage that you don't understand. And then, obviously, go to the questions. Some people may tell you to go straight to the questions. I think it's a good idea to look at the title, the picture, and the first paragraph before you go to the questions. The most important thing to remember here is that you should not read the title. You should not read the article completely. You're not reading for pleasure here. You're not reading a book. You're reading within a fixed time period. And so it's important not to waste your time reading text that you don't need to read. Look at the title, look at the picture, look at the first paragraph, and then go straight to the questions. Let's have a look at some of these questions now. There are 40 questions in the reading. They become more difficult. Question 1, question 2, question 3 are usually comparatively easy. At the other end of the spectrum, questions 36, 37, 38, 39 usually are much more difficult. But the important thing to remember here is that all of the questions are worth the same mark. There are 3 sections to the reading, and as I've said before, those sections become more difficult throughout the exam. Each question is worth the same mark, so again, don't spend too long on each question. I would recommend 1.5 or maximum of 2 minutes for each question. If you still don't know the answer, right at the end of the exam, always guess. Always put something. You don't lose a mark for putting the wrong answer, and you might get it right. If you don't answer any question, if you don't put any answer, then you know that you definitely will not get it right. Let's look at some more examples. A very common question is heading matching. Academic texts are usually divided into paragraphs. A very common test is to look at each paragraph and then match each paragraph with what you think is an appropriate heading. Let's have a look now at an example of a paragraph here. Remember that in academic writing, the central topic of each paragraph is usually, but not always, usually given to you in the first sentence. You might remember this from your writing. Okay, the first sentence, most of the time, usually tells us what the rest of the paragraph will be about. let's look at an example paragraph here. Perhaps the advantage of the walking school bus is the health benefits of regular physical exercise. With the rise of childhood obesity, this is a significant factor. Studies show that approximately 14% of young people are not physically active, which is almost 10%, while almost 10% of children aged 2 to 16 are considered overweight in the United States. Now, if we are asked to decide what the general topic of that paragraph is, and we have a choice of different headings we can give: benefiting the local environment, providing healthy daily exercise, the aim of the walking school bus, and the development of the walking school bus, then it's quite easy to see by looking at that first sentence that the answer obviously is providing healthy daily exercise. So far, so good. Let's have a look at another way that we can understand the gist and the overall topic of a particular paragraph. Again, let's have a look at this short paragraph. The walking school bus concept originated in 1998 in St Albans, England, as a result of parental concerns over speeding vehicles and children's safety. The idea spread through Britain and was adopted quickly in Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. Because of the social and physical benefits of the walking bus, the number of programs in such locations has continued to grow. In the United States, however, the walking bus programs have not caught on as quickly. Hopefully, the number of such programs there will multiply as soon as people recognize their numerous advantages. Now, we can use sometimes the grammatical structure in a paragraph to understand the topic. For example, here we can see that we've got lots of examples of past forms. If we have the choice, again, the same choice of headings here, and we need to decide which heading we can is appropriate to use for this paragraph, then again, as I said before, we can look at the past forms of the verbs here, and we can see that we've got originated, was adopted, spread quickly, has continued to grow, so we've got present perfect there, have not caught on as quickly. We can see here that this is talking about the history of something. It's talking about the in many ways what has gone before, the past of this. Again, if we look at the same topics there, we can see that we're given here the development, and that's a bit difficult to see there, but the development of the walking school bus. This paragraph tells us how something develops. Now, let's just do now have a little bit of a recap at some of the questions that you can be expected to be asked. The questions test your range of abilities. You may have to match paragraphs with headings. You may have gap filling, which is where you're given a sentence and you have to fill in the missing words. Okay? You may have sentence completion, very common reading topic. This is where you are given you're given the first part of a sentence and you have to match that sentence with the second part, with the information that you're given in the reading. And also true, false, and not given. Okay? This tests your ability to understand the text in a much deeper level, to understand the writer's opinion and to understand what the writer means but maybe does not say directly. Always answer every question. Again, you don't lose marks for a wrong answer. Check the word limit. Okay, look very carefully at the word limit. Does the question ask you to write a maximum of 2 words or a maximum of 3 words? Very, very important. If it asks you for a maximum of 3 words and you write 4, it doesn't matter what those words are. Unfortunately, you're going to lose that mark. So be careful there. Look at the word limit all the time. Remember, spelling is vital. It's very different in the listening, but in the reading, remember that you're using text that's given to you in the text there. There's no excuse for bad spelling, okay? But do be careful, especially if time is a problem. If you're stressed, if you're nervous in the exam, make sure that you copy the text accurately, you copy the word accurately, and also make sure your handwriting is clear. It's a real shame to lose a mark because you haven't written the answer clearly, so be careful. Also, remember that the word limit does include articles and prepositions. So, let's look now at the overview of the reading. Okay, it lasts for 60 minutes. Remember, there's no extra time. In the exam, you will be reminded of the time. You will be told, I think, 20 minutes before you finish, and then again, I think you will be reminded again 10 minutes before. So the examiner, whoever is running the exam, will give you an idea of the time. But as I said, time is your biggest problem in the reading, I think. 3 parts of the reading, as we said, they become more difficult. The first part's quite easy. The third part is usually very difficult. 40 questions, as I said, they become more difficult, and you should expect a range of questions there, like some of the examples that we looked at earlier. It's the second part of the test. Remember that you do the listening first of all, then you've got the reading, and then after that you've got the writing. There's no extra time for answers there, very, very important. All the time, some students fail because they didn't realize that there was no extra time for writing the answers there. It's not the same as the listening. And remember there, that word limit does include articles and prepositions. They're words the same as everything else. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation there. I'd like now to deal with people's questions, if I can, and I will try and answer those questions as best I can. Let's see if I can answer some of these questions now. Natalie, again, your question, when we need a gap with 3 words, for example. So yes, prepositions and articles are counted in your word limit there. They're just normal words, the same as everything else. Examples of true, false, or not given. True, false, or not given are actually the most difficult questions generally, and sometimes there can be a very, very small difference between no and not given. It really tests your ability to understand what is implied by the text, but what is not actually directly stated. Have I taken the exam, Dasha? I haven't actually. I've trained for the exam, and thankfully I don't have to take the exam. But to answer your question as to whether the arts exam is difficult, that really depends what score you need to get. If you ask me if it's very difficult to get a level 8.5, then it is very, very difficult, although not impossible. Is it difficult to get a level 5? Again, it depends on your skill. Remember, there's no pass or fail for the arts exam. It's a measure of your English ability, and you need to check and see what institution, or if you're taking the exam for immigration purposes, then again, what is required for you, whether it's a 6 or a 5.5, dependent on your needs. Do I think knowing many words helps in reading? Obviously, yes. Remember, as I said before, in the exam you don't have a dictionary. If you don't know the word in the exam, there's very little you can do. Reading all the time before the exam is obviously very, very good practice. If you're taking academic, then the text will be of a more academic nature. But if you're taking the arts general, then the texts can come from anywhere. They could be advertisements, they could be pieces from newspaper, they could be texts written in different kind of styles, maybe some formal, maybe some less formal. Wide reading, so reading a range of things, is always beneficial. I always tell students to read things like the BBC website or any other English language material. It really doesn't matter on the context, really. Okay, reading, reading, reading all the time. The more you can immerse yourself, the more reading you can do before the exam, then the better it will be for you when you come to sit your exam. The Economist, yeah, The Economist, great. Especially if you're taking, academic, because as I said, the texts in the academic tend to be more formal. Okay, I've got the question: how many questions do I need to answer to get an 8? If you're doing academic, and I don't know if you're doing academic or not, but you need to get about 35 out of 40 questions correct to get a level 8. Okay, and yes, you can see band descriptors online. So yes, you should aim to get about 35 questions minimum correct. Not impossible, not easy either though. Okay, do we have any more questions? IELTS vocabulary books. Yes, there are lots of IELTS vocabulary books. Cambridge do a very good vocabulary book. That's Cambridge Publications, and that's simply called Vocabulary for IELTS. There's also another similar book called Grammar for IELTS, but Vocabulary for IELTS is very, very good. It gives you a range of active vocabulary and vocabulary that's used a lot in the reading, and also that you can use in your writing as well. The difference between academic and general. Generally, the academic is slightly more difficult. It's slightly more challenging. The first 2 parts of the reading, and remember, there are 3 parts to the reading. The first 2 parts are pretty much the same. But the third part in the academic is much more difficult. In the general, it's almost like a part 1 and then 2 part 2s. Diana asks, do you have to read the whole text during the reading? No, no, no. Very important. This is the difference between reading for pleasure and reading in your arts exam. Okay, you've only got 60 minutes. You should not, never, never, never read the article from start to finish. It's not the same as reading a book. As I said, remember the strategy that I told you. Look at the title, look at the picture if there is one, and there isn't always. Then skim the first paragraph, only the first paragraph, and then go to the questions. Do not continue reading after the first paragraph until you've looked at the questions. Really, really important now. Very good advice. The text can be on any topic. Yes. The text can be on absolutely anything. They are texts that people can generally understand, though. There won't be any very technical vocabulary in there. Do remember that if there is any technical vocabulary, you may have a glossary. So you may, at the bottom of the text, you may have some definitions for some words if they think they're words that you won't understand, like maybe technical vocabulary or unusual lexis like that. Margarita asks if you only need to remember keywords after the first paragraph. Again, the important thing here to remember is your kind of 1 minute rule. Okay, 1 minute for each question. If you don't answer, if you can't understand the question in 1 minute, keep going. Do the easy ones first, then return to them. So in that sense, yes, first of all, when you first look at the article, you're focusing on those keywords to understand the general idea of the text. Remember that when you look at the text, when you open the text on exam day, when you open the reading, your first job is to, as quickly as possible, to understand what is this reading about, approximately. Look at the text, make friends with the reading, understand what approximately the reading is talking about. Not the details, but just the, as we say, the gist, the overall meaning of the topic there. The sections might look like scientific articles, but they're really not. They're formal articles and they're academic texts, but they're not texts that someone with any kind of level of general knowledge and a good standard of English should not be expected to understand. So they're not strange or unusual or highly technical texts at all. Does a 15-year-old child have a chance to get a 7 or 8 in the exam? Yes, definitely. Recently, well, about 6 months ago, I had a 16-year-old girl who got 7.5. So obviously, yes. 8 is very difficult, but it's possible. It's dependent on your language level and not your age. Maxim asks, will it be better to skim the text quickly or to read the first set of questions? Some teachers may tell you to go straight to the questions, but I think really you want to spend a couple of minutes just looking at the title and looking at that first paragraph, just so you can understand generally what the text's about, then go to the questions. As I said before, the important thing, stop reading after that first paragraph. Don't read any more until you've looked at the questions. Anna asks, is not given popular for answering? I'm not quite sure what you mean with your question there. There will always be yes, no, or not given, or sometimes true, false, not given questions in the arts exam. So in that sense, they're popular questions, yes. Okay, I'm still here to obviously answer any more questions regarding the reading exam. It's good to see so many of you watching and listening wherever you are. I hope this is of help for you generally. Pavel asked, is there any chance that I might get the texts from the preparation? With the arts exam, there are a range of past papers, listening, reading and writing available via Cambridge. So yes, it's possible very easily to see previous exam questions there. Is the level of IELTS closer to upper intermediate or to advanced level? Well, again, it depends what level of IELTS you're looking at there. Remember that IELTS is graded from 0, which no one ever gets, to 9, which again, very few people ever get a 9. So it really depends what level of IELTS you're looking at there. Upper intermediate is generally equivalent to about a level 6 or 6.5 for IELTS. Olga asks, is the IELTS reading more difficult than TOEFL? They are approximately the same. There's not really any great difference there in terms of difficulty. Sabrina asks, if I meet difficult text, which tips will be good in such a situation? Well, this is really what we've been looking at before. Again, focus on the key words. Don't read the text completely. Don't waste your time reading it completely. Always think that the text will be paraphrased. Paraphrasing is a very, very important concept. If any of you will be listening to the webinar scheduled for Thursday, then I'll be back again and I'll be speaking about the speaking part of the exam, and we'll be looking at paraphrasing again there. Paraphrasing, if you don't know already, is explaining the same thing, giving the same information, but in different words. The reading tests your ability to recognize paraphrasing in the same way that speaking tests your ability to paraphrase itself. Is IELTS more difficult than CAE? Again, as I've said before, it depends what level of pardon me, what level of IELTS you want to get. At my level, if I took the exam now, I hope I would get 9. I don't think that would be a problem. Although, do remember that not all native speakers would necessarily achieve a level 9 in IELTS. A level 9 is a proficient native speaker with a good university education. Okay, do we have any more questions? Yes, someone said paraphrasing is the most important thing. Yes, definitely. Paraphrasing is vital for your IELTS in reading, in listening, in speaking, and of course in writing. Maxim asks if the type of text changed since the 1st of January. The type of text always change, unfortunately. The questions, on the other hand, don't. Okay, that's the important thing to remember. As I said, the questions test your ability to read in 3 different ways. One of the most important things to remember is that for every question, you should ask yourself, which reading skill do I need to use to answer this question? Do I need to scan? Do I need to skim the general understanding? Or do I need to look closer and read certain passages of the text in much more detail? Do I know anyone who got 9 points? Yes, I do. I know people that have got 9 for speaking. I know several people that have got 9 for reading, and people that have got 9 for listening. I don't know if I know anyone who's got 9 for writing. Maybe, but I can't think offhand. Useful tips in the reading part. Well, again, as I said before, the most important thing, time is your biggest enemy. Okay, make sure that you don't worry about words that you don't already understand. You may not need to understand the words. As I said before, you've got between 2,000 and 2,500 words that you have to move through in the text. You don't need to understand the meaning of each of those words. That's one of the most important things to remember. The best books for preparing for the reading part. Again, any Cambridge past papers are always very good. Focus on IELTS. Book called Focus on IELTS. There's just been a new edition come out for that. That's very good. There is another book called Step Up to IELTS. All of these books have examples, and very good examples, of reading texts in them. Some easy reading and some more difficult reading, and then some very, very challenging reading there. How can you understand if the teacher is professional enough? You need to check really and see how much experience they've got at preparing students for the arts exam, and of being involved in IELTS generally, how much teaching experience they've got, and how familiar they are with the exam. Unfortunately, I'm very familiar myself. I say unfortunately because it's not always that interesting. Okay, again, if anyone has any more questions, I'm more than happy to give you some information regarding that. Anna asks, would you recommend taking lessons with a Russian teacher? It depends entirely on the skill of the Russian teacher. It really doesn't matter if they're a Russian teacher or not, but it does matter how much experience they've got at looking at the IELTS exam generally. Do remember as well that if a Russian teacher, if you do have a Russian teacher, then it may be worth asking them if they've taken the exam themselves, which if they're Russian and they're teaching, then they may well have done. Sorry? Are we finishing? Nastia asked, what score must a teacher have? If you're teaching, then you usually a Russian teacher would usually be expected to have a minimum, I would say, of a level 8. I know if a Russian teacher wants to be an examiner, they need to be a level 9. Thank you, Alexei. Regards for Windsor School. Thank you. Anne, I'm from England, actually, from just outside London. Again, there is also an IELTS consultant here who also can answer any further questions there that you have. Marina asks, where can I get it? Where can you get what? I'm not quite sure. Dasha, how long have I been in Russia? I've been in Russia now for about 3.5 years, actually. Between 3.5 years. And I don't speak Russian, unfortunately, or not very well. The Queen Mother, she's dead. Marina, no, I don't know Russian well. I know Russian a little bit, but not very well. Unfortunately, I'm so busy teaching English that I don't have enough time to learn Russian, which is a shame. Привет. What do I know in Russian? Lots of things that maybe. Yes, I know some things. Anna asks, how many time is a good decision to spend for preparing? No teachers are miracles, unfortunately. If you're a level 4, then you're not going to miraculously, magically get to be a level 7.5 or level 8 within a matter of weeks. Unfortunately, it does take time. It is perfectly possible, though, to move up half a point or maybe even one whole grade after a couple of months, I would say, of training and of preparation and of general practice in both speaking and reading as much as possible. Marina asks, with intermediate level, is it a good idea to try to pass the test or to have some course to improve the level? So what you're meaning there obviously is that, is it a good idea to take the test straight away, or is it good to practice your general English and take a general English course before? Again, the answer for that really depends on what you personally need to get for IELTS. Some people only need a 5.5, and if you only need a 5.5, that is perfectly achievable by somebody of an intermediate level. If your level is intermediate and you need to get a 7.5, then yes, I would recommend that maybe you maybe spent some time looking at the basics of grammar and just extending your vocabulary, possibly by doing a general course for a month or so before you move on to look at the IELTS exam. Anna asks if you need to bring your own pen or pencil for using the exam. You will be given a pencil, which you should write in an exam, and they'll explain that to you when you arrive there. An extra sheet? Yes, you're given an extra sheet to put your answers on. You can write on the reading booklet. You can write whatever you want, and that's not looked at. That's not marked. You can use that to underline words and draw on as much as you want. But you will be given a separate answer sheet. But as I explained before, do remember that you've only got 1 hour to put your answers onto the separate answer sheet. It's not like the listening, where you have, in the listening, you have an extra 10 minutes at the end of the exam to put your answers onto a separate answer sheet. In the reading, no. 60 minutes for everything, no extra time. Natalie asks, how do we know if the exam ends? Is there a ring or something? You will be reminded throughout the reading of the time. As I said before, you will be told that you have 40 minutes left. You will be reminded again, I think at 10 minutes, you will be reminded again 5 minutes before the exam finishes. So you will be told lots and lots of times. Okay, so unfortunately we're out of time there, so we're going to leave it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar, and I hope it's been of value to you. If you need any more information, or if we can help you any more, then obviously get in touch with us here at Windsor School. And I will return again on Thursday evening at the same time, and we'll look at some tips for speaking then. In the meantime, tomorrow night you'll have my colleague Jason, and he'll be talking to you, I believe, about the writing part of the exam. So that's something you may want to look forward to. Okay, so we will leave it there. Thanks very much, and goodbye and good night.